mention a Gundam MSO9?
Spoiler alert. You're listening to the Comics Online Podcast. Season 20. Episode 5. 1985 Part 3. Broadcast live from FXBG Public Radio November 18th, 2019. This episode, Kevin and Troy David return to 1985 to cover TV, movies, games, events, and everything geek pop culture.
Converting earthly language into thrust. As you kneel before Aizawa, legend of Zelda's turn to dust. Podcasting from the future like your time was dead and gone. And we rock the best site like comicsonline.com. Level 12 cybernetics, vibranium power acts. You communicate with snail mail while we wireless adapt. We are more than ECI as we descend to blow your spot. You're a copy of better tech like your name was GoBots. You hoping for iTunes, but little noob, you in the danger zone. We're all the best leaders like Serpentor on his throne. Written by Stan the Man, don't you ever try to serve thee. New got stuff this book like we were drawn by Jack Kirby. Hunger like Sinistar, consumer culture then Galactus. Final Fantasy domination with our super geeky tactics. From the days of Marconi to Buff and Loud Investment City. You can hear us on every radio, stolen in Vice City. From leaping tall buildings to going off like gamma bombs. Switch your internet browser to comicsonline.com.
Hello again and welcome back. Troy, we're back.
Oh my God, we're back.
Hello again. Welcome to the Comics Online Podcast, Season 20, Episode 5. You might have thought, oh, these guys have abandoned us once again. And never. I mean, we'll always be back. Sometimes we get caught up in things and things happen. We get sick.
Things and stuff.
Some
some reversals of fortune, some unfortunate events. Series.
Real.
What is it? A series of
Unfortunate events. And the Netflix one, much better than that Jim Carrey one. But who has to tell you that? Come on, you know already. But
Probably just stick with the book.
Yeah, but the books are very kid-like. I mean, they'd be fun to read to a kid who was an early reader. My son read the first 11 of them or something like that when he was of that age. But anyway, so we are back. To go back to 1985 because you remember when we left off with our Time Lords Almanac. Comics Online travels through time to 1985. Well, of course, this is Troy David. Have you met him, or have you watched shows starring Troy David? Well, Troy David Phillips, who you probably know from this beautiful, wonderful store. The store with the biggest heart in all the land, in my opinion. Flashback Comics in Woodbridge, Virginia. Well, you know Troy as the guy running the joint. Well,
Hey.
Troy is a big comic guy. Troy is a big music guy, and so we got a little comic and music heavy in the first two parts of 1985. And basically all we can say, Troy, is sorry, not sorry.
Yeah. So what you'll want to do is you'll want to fire up your ZZ Top Afterburner, your Shriekback Oil and Gold, The Firm, Riptide, Pete Townsend, The White City, while you sit down with your Heroes for Hire, your New Teen Titans, Crisis on Infinite Earths, Sergeant Rock 400, and that puts you back. You remember where we are now? We're in 1985.
Yeah.
You remember?
Well, see, and we would have been playing once again the Bowling for Soup song 1985, but the music people have been such pains in the rear end that Troy's gonna sing it for you instead. Troy,
that's not happening.
Troy, let's just say that Troy is in fact way before Nirvana. So we're gonna talk about we already talked about comics and music. Well, and that leaves movies, television, events, and games. And I feel like we can cover that in one episode here today. I feel like we can.
Again.
It could happen, right?
It hurts the back of my throat to snort like that, Kevin. Do I have to do it again?
It's the which house? The house I'm parked in front of.
The house on the left?
I got you, bro.
All right. Anyway, so we're going to talk about our top five and these things. And so, Troy, do you have a preference in where we start? We didn't even talk about this today.
Well,
I was so busy in
we were both very, very busy. We both got a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
And so, incidentally, if you're joining us tonight, catching us live, you are the first people in this audience to see the Troy David haircut. Finally, went out and did that, took care of grooming. So this is going to be the look for a couple of weeks. I'm working with the goatee here again. To answer Kevin's question before I get too far off the side here.
I haven't asked it yet, Troy. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. This is an older one?
No, the question that you did just ask is, let's tackle movies. There's a lot going on in 1985 in cinema, in wide release cinema.
Okay.
I feel like we'll probably focus on on the pop culture, the parts that are most relevant, near and dear to our hearts. Certainly, the fans of fantasy, science fiction, high speed action.
Okay, well,
we're not going to do the rom-coms and the tear-jerker dramas and that stuff. I mean, Kevin loves those things, but what can you say?
So we haven't. We haven't gone and EK stepped away for a minute, so we're not going to get into the sci-fi stuff yet. But let's talk about the non-sci-fi stuff. 1985 brought us some high dollar things. Number 2 for the year, it brought us Zoe. She's a big number 2 some days, but most of the time she's awesome. Number 2 for the year was Rambo, First Blood Part 2, which made over $150 million domestically.
Wow.
Also featuring Rambo himself, Rocky 4, which made nearly that. Also that year, The Color Purple, Out of Africa, Jewel of the Nile, Witness. And Spies Like Us. Now, I've skipped a couple of things, and you might think, well, you're skipping the stuff. Don't worry. I'm about to get. Did I put Rambo in there? I did put Rambo in there.
Rambo, and that's the one I have.
Oh, you have it. Oh, okay. I didn't even realize that. But yeah, so here we have. Here we're in 2019, the year. A big year for returns of things, and we've got this year we've got Rambo: Last Blood. Are you just rolling through this? Red Sonja.
Yeah, look at
All
that.
right, so also in 1985, Red Sonja debuted. Do you have this on some auto scroll?
Oops, yes, I'm sorry.
We're being weird today. That's okay.
I was going to say, and can we get the top half of that poster so we can see Brigitte Nielsen's face?
You got her muscular physique. What more do you need? For some reason, I never was fond of her, but Troy was. Troy was like,
Oh, yes, I was.
Troy's a fan.
Yes,
No
I
joke.
was. Not just that film, but especially that film.
Oh, all right then.
So 1985, there's a lot going on. At least if you were a fan of the movies. Now this is in the days well before the AMC Movie Pass, the A-List Pass, the Regal Cinema Club, etc. But if you were one of those people who went to a movie a week, well, there were.
Regal's got a thing now too, where you can pay a certain amount and just go as many times as you want.
Yeah, you go to their
I might
website.
switch.
I'm not, but but in any
They're
event,
closer to me.
oh well. So in any event, were there 52 movies that year that you would want to go and see if you went at the rate of one a week. Now, I probably didn't actually see 52 movies that year myself. 1985, so I was 19 years old. I was fresh out of high school. I did get to the movies. I did, go out and do things. But, well, I was also living on my own, and I had to, make a dollar stretch. I had grown up responsibilities because I was of the age of majority.
So let me go through. Let's go through some of these things, and I'm just going to go through alphabetically things that pop up to me. We've got in Troy's realm, we've got American Ninja, since obviously Troy just fits that bill.
Well, I was a fan of martial art action cinema, and on the low end of that scale is the American Ninja series, this being the first of them. Michael Dudikoff and Steve James, I believe, is in this one. There are moments of excellence in terms of fight choreography, but they are only moments. Otherwise, this film is, I sometimes say unflatteringly, it was a cinematic crappy piece of crap.
That's what I've heard, and it seems like I've seen it, and it didn't stick with me. So I'm gonna agree that that's probably the case.
Now, to contrast that, I'm going to skip up here because Kevin brought it up. So, by contrast, Sho Kosugi starred in a film called Pray for Death. Sho Kosugi, you'll remember from films like Enter the Ninja, Revenge of the Ninja, Ninja 3: The Domination, and a host of others. Well, Pray for Death. This was another one of Sho Kosugi's. That film was significantly better than the American Ninja series.
All right. So what? I feel like we're getting that in our headphones. Sorry if anybody hears a yelling kid, but whatever. You get what you get. This is free entertainment, folks, and I hope you're enjoying this. I hope you are enjoying this. As the guy says, who was that? I don't know. Some cartoon character. Also this year, other in the B category, in the B movies, not really. Breakfast Club.
Yeah.
And Brewster's Millions. Breakfast Club, one of the best, soundtracks ever.
Well, certainly. That is an excellent soundtrack. Ironically, and I talked about this before with the Simple Minds. The Simple Minds agreed to perform that song, Don't You Forget About Me, but they did not want that song on their album. So it's on the soundtrack, and it's in the greatest hits, but it doesn't actually appear on I believe it's Once Upon a Time is the album of that time.
All right.
But The Breakfast Club is an excellent John Hughes vehicle. It's one of those sort of high school coming of age films that John Hughes did that type of story so well. Molly Ringwald, Emilio Estevez, you know the cast, you know the movie.
Sure.
And we all saw it. If we didn't see it in the theater, then we rented that video from the local video store, be it Errol's or wherever, a whole bunch of times.
Yeah. Well, let's see what else we got here. And Brewster's Millions, as I say, as well. That was one of those that I saw time and again when it comes to, yes, please, I will have one of those. I will have that one.
Alrighty.
This
Set
show
that to
not
the
really
side there.
sponsored by Stone, that has a great number of IPAs that are delicious.
So,
Go on.
Kevin's in the B category here.
I am.
But I also wanted to point out that indeed. So anyway, we'll just keep talking for the audio people.
Oh yeah, for the audio people, thanks for sticking around. So Back to the Future was 1985, and what was your first experience with Back to the Future, Troy?
Back to the Future, a bunch of my friends and I went to our local theater. We went to Skyline Mall. That doesn't mean much to you now, but at the time, that was a popular Friday hangout. And we went, a bunch of us, 17, 18, 19-year-olds, went and descended on the theater, took up a whole row, and ate popcorn and watched as Marty McFly went back in time and ensured that his two parents met and fell in love and ensured his existence. And of course, because we were science fiction fans, we had to explore in great overthinking detail the predetermination loop. If Marty goes back in time when his father, and from the point where his father is bullied by Biff, he travels back in time to then reverse the roles. So now Biff is subservient to his father. But we also saw, as one Marty left, another Marty arrived. Doc was shot. Doc was fine. Doc read the letter that he shouldn't have read. So what happened here? Did Marty create multiple divergences? Is there a Marty McFly that returned to the present only to find Biff bullying his father, while our Marty goes back to where his dad is cool and stands up for himself? Maybe there's another Marty who returned home only to find out that his father was a tyrannical, fanatic, ultra-fascist kind of guy. Like he went too far. Like how many different Martys, how many different Mr. McFlys, how many different versions were there? And of course, we're thinking about this like it's super serious science fiction, like, like these questions have answers that need to be answered. But, it also made us fall in love with, with Michael J. Fox. If we weren't already, then, we were.
There you go. It was a fantastic movie. My biggest recollection of the movie, my biggest recollections of the movie have kind of been overshot by stuff in the more recent years. Matt Cernacker went and had we got a very cool, back in the early days. You may recall, Troy, in the early days of Brand New Day, who was brought on to write some Amazing Spider-Man, but Bob Gale. Well, and of course, as you saw before that change, Bob Gale was the writer or one of the writers of Back to the Future. And so Matt was like, "Oh, I'm going to go and ask him some Back to the Future questions." And apparently that was against the rules or something like that. I probably shouldn't go into any more detail than that, but Bob didn't like it, and that interview ended real fast, and Matt felt terrible and gets upset when I mention it to this day. But Matt's too busy to watch this show, so sorry, not sorry once again. Anyway, fantastic movie. I loved it. I much like you. I engaged my friends for years to come in the way the time travel worked, and of course after this we got Back to the Future 2 and 3 that stretched it out more and gave us even more to go off of as to how time travel worked in this universe.
Yeah, certainly, this isn't the first film to ever deal with time travel, and it was far from the last to ever deal with time travel. It made some points. It established itself, only to be perhaps overtaken, overshadowed, superseded. Who knows?
Yeah.
But Are we still in B's?
No.
I'm going by months. You're going by letters. So.
Oh, I see. Well, let's go by the top films, and we'll go into some others as well. Let's move on to C's, and also number 6 in the highest grossing films of 1985, Cocoon.
Cocoon was that's a film that I've only seen this film. I honestly believe I've only seen the film beginning to end once in my life. I've caught pieces of it here and there. It would be on maybe. I remember actually once going to a friend's house. We were going to play some tabletop role playing, and while waiting for everybody to show up, they were just finishing off. I believe actually it was Cocoon. They were just finishing that, so I didn't get to see the whole thing. And then everybody showed up, and we got around the table, and we rolled dice and had a good time for probably 6.5, 7 hours that night. Because that's what you did with those marathon game sessions. Cocoon was, me personally, not one of my favorite science fiction type films. It was a bit slower moving in places.
Well, it's about old people, and so when we were young, it's like, that's like, well, whatever. It's fine, and it's got a bit of a sci-fi twist to it. But it didn't really speak to us then. How do you feel about it now?
Well, I haven't seen it in recent enough that I think I should see it again just to kind of refresh that. What I was going to say, though, is while obviously I'm a science fiction fan for things like Star Wars, that's a good example. Your Empire Strikes Back, or actually even Return of the Jedi would be more relevant to this point in time. Mm-hmm. But I had also enjoyed science fiction films that weren't predicated on space operas, like Altered States. That was an interesting film, kind of dealing with a sort of transhumanism, I think, is, as the main character does his experiments with sensory deprivation and takes himself backwards and forwards through his evolutionary states. I kind of like exploring the story types. I just didn't think that this film explored its themes as well as it could have. But your mileage may vary.
Okay.
Not every, whether it be, again, science fiction, like for every science fiction film that I could name that I love, I could name one that I'm like, oh, that was painful to watch, made my eyeballs bleed. I could do the same thing with kaiju movies, with martial arts movies, with shoot 'em up action movies. For every good one, there's like 10 turkeys.
Yeah, you're probably right. You know what? We had an eventual return to this, and I don't know as I ever saw it. There was a Cocoon 2 or something like that, right, Troy?
Yeah, I never saw that.
I never saw it either, and I feel like I should probably give it a chance at some point. I enjoy this, because here, now that it's no longer 1985, and I'm now 2027. The appeal of the extended lifespan is appealing to me, more than it was as a kid, because when you're a kid, it's like, oh, I want to be older, and you get to be middle aged, and you're like, I don't have time to do everything I would like to in life. I think taking a swim with the Cocoon rocks would be great.
Yeah, well, there comes a point when you're young and you just feel like you're going to be young forever, that you're never going to be old. That's so far down the line that by the time you get there, everything will take care of itself. But there is a point when, I think, for most of us, when you reach that age where you're a quarter of a century old and you are not master of the universe.
Eventually, you figure that part out, and it's a shocking part of life.
Or you are in the middle of attaining something. You're very goal oriented, and you're in the middle of attaining it, and then you do attain it, but you realize that achieving that goal will completely eat up your 20s. When you get your goal, you'll be 30. You have no choice because that's what happens when you get a bachelor's, followed immediately by a master's, followed immediately by your doctoral studies. Well, you're not going to finish all that when you're 24.
No.
That's not how that works.
It doesn't. So you can do it, and you can have the benefits that come from that. But your 20s are gone.
Yep. You worked through them.
Mm-hmm.
we're still in C or?
I just thought I would continue on the highest grossing films and move on to G, Troy.
Oh, well, because, it's funny. Because
that's where you were?
2 Gs come up. And so in the month of March, this terrible movie called The Ghoulies came up. But then, that's, they'll get you in the end. Oh my God, that is like C movie. I'm like, I don't even remember. Was that a trauma movie? Was that?
It might as well have been.
Like this was on a level even lower than the Toxic Avenger. I'm like, it was so bad. It was one of those things that we teenagers sitting around someone's, sitting in the basement, one of our friends who had cable on home box office, we would watch this thing.
Right.
But then by contrast, a much better movie under the letter G was Goonies. And again, that was a film that connected to us. We were young, they were having adventures. It was Steven Spielberg, so that right there is a step in the right direction in anything.
Oh, it was, and it was so good. I mean, well, and when it comes to Steven Spielberg, so was Back to the Future, produced by anyway.
And Steven Spielberg's name is attached to so many things that we enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
But also attached to this, I remember Cyndi Lauper did one of the songs for the Goonies soundtrack.
Yeah.
Goonies are good enough.
Goonies are good enough. And the funny thing is, it was one of those soundtracks. I think my sister had the soundtrack. And, and so I would hear the soundtrack and then see the movie. And I'm like, that song was not in this movie. Why is this in the soundtrack? And I was really unhappy about that fact.
So I'll give you a quick aside anecdote. I was watching the film for the very first time. I was watching the film, and actually I think it was 1985 when I saw the film, was Streets of Fire. Michael Paré, Diane Lane, Amy Madigan, Deborah Van Valkenburg, Willem Dafoe, Rick Moranis, Bill Paxton. There's like a laundry list of actors you'll recognize from other places. I had owned the soundtrack to the film before I'd ever seen the film. I'm watching the movie and waiting for one of my favorite songs. It's on the soundtrack. It's got to be in here somewhere. Deeper and Deeper by The Fix. That song, which isn't on a Fix album, incidentally, it's only on the soundtrack. That song appears in the film as the end credits roll.
Yeah.
They're like, oh my God. But it's a decent film, and the soundtrack is awesome, and the songs definitely are part of the scenery in that. We'll talk about that another show. In any event,
Goonies, fantastic. We've got the return of what's his name? Kwan Daniel, was that his name?
Daniel Kwan?
Yeah. He, who we will remember from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, which is my favorite Indiana Jones movie. I know it's not everybody else's, but it's my favorite Indiana Jones movie.
It's my least favorite.
And a lot of people say that. I feel like that's a real polar thing going on. And the Sean Connery one, much as I love Sean Connery, is my least favorite one.
Oh, see, that and Raiders are neck and neck tied. Raiders of the Lost Ark and Indiana Jones and the Temple and the Last Crusade. Mm-hmm. Those two are neck and neck tied for best. I don't hate Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, but when I'm watching Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, when I see that weird dinner banquet scene and they bring out the snake surprise,
I love it.
And Indy doesn't freak out about the snakes, I'm like, that's not Indiana Jones. And Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade explained where his snake phobia came from. Raiders of the Lost Ark very much established the snake phobia, and Temple of Doom just ignored it.
But anyway, so
couldn't be bothered.
Oh, Jonathan, that was his name, Jonathan Kwan. And I didn't even look it up. I probably could have done that. And of course, we have Rudy himself in this one as well. That is to say, Samwise Gamgee, which I'm pretty sure that's his actual name. Sorry, Sean.
That's like when I refer to the actress as Sansa Turner.
It's a Turner, exactly.
So also, you know what we got here, Kevin? I'm jumping all over the place here, but if you need something to enjoy with the little ones in 1985, when Kevin was a wee shaver.
Is there a little one in there? Or are you going to come and sit with us?
So, Baby, Secret of the Lost Legend. We skipped
Yeah.
over the B.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Hey, do we have a baby? Give me a baby.
Yeah.
They said it couldn't possibly exist, Troy, but in fact, this adventure began 150 million years ago, much like this episode.
Yeah, so yeah, here we are, time layers, doing our thing. So this was well before Jurassic Park. I mean, this was almost a full decade before Jurassic Park. A dinosaur story, and not an animated cartoon type story. Now, Jurassic Park would obviously A, be based on the Michael Crichton novel, and B, have a much more mature sensibility about it. But
this baby has got Sean Young, who we'll remember from
Blade Runner,
and William Catt, who we'll remember as the greatest American hero.
Yes.
Even greater than Captain America. Sorry, Cap. It's really William Catt.
It's in the name.
Yeah.
Not much can be done for that.
I've seen the show. He's the mediocrest American.
He's the greatest in his heart.
Now,
he really, really wants to be great.
This is what you get when it's family friendly. When it's not family friendly, then it's Friday the 13th, The New Beginning.
Oh, yeah.
If Jason still haunts you, you're not alone. Oh, my God. Friday the 13th, Part 5, A New Beginning. I mean, like...
There's nothing on that poster, and it's terrifying.
At this point, I am barely remembering what differentiates one film from another.
I have no idea what happens in Part 5, but I'll tell you what happens. All those tropes that you see in Scream, that they happen in this movie, because by then it's codified. That's what happens.
So, if you want something not for the kids, but not so terrifying, let me recommend Porky's Revenge. That was another 1985 piece. So
that was one of those much rewinded things. Wait, was that boobs? Let me rewind to the boobs.
There was a bunch of that. That was one of those films. And again, there were, we were teenagers.
Tape got stretched out.
17, 18, 19-year-olds all sitting in a room, huddled around home box office and Showtime, and...
Couldn't rewind those, but the tapes you could.
Yeah, exactly. Of course, in later years, today, I'm watching HBO and I can pause. Mm-hmm. I can back up. And then I can speed back up to get to where I should actually be. This is awesome.
Yeah.
What a future we live in. We also had The Last Dragon. Now this was...
Which was that?
This featured a young African-American martial artist named Timac, who starred as Bruce Leroy. That was the unfortunate nickname that he was given in the film.
Vanity, Keisha Knight Pulliam.
A young Ernie Reyes Jr.
Wow.
And, of course, this is where our guy gets the glow. This is where he unlocks his martial arts mastery, overcomes the bad guy, gets the girl. Had a very interesting 1980s disco-esque soundtrack to it. We had songs like DeBarge, Rhythm of the Night, and others. But... I enjoyed the martial arts action sequences. I enjoyed the fight choreography. The original motion picture score and soundtrack, they were pretty cool. Kevin's over here getting his groove on.
We can leave them all behind, Troy.
Also, I'm just shooting through, in terms of what was good and funny, Police Academy 2.
Oh, yeah.
Police Academy 2, their first assignment. I enjoyed the first 4 Police Academy films. After that, I was
You
ready.
start losing the characters, and
Yeah.
it's less fun.
It really was. It kind of, there were some jokes that they just kind of beat a little too long. I mean, you can make a humor series, something like Airplane to Airplane 2, but you can't just keep hammering it. That looks like it's supposed to be eaten, and
Yeah, we're gonna go and eat on a. So we're going over from. Look at this! It's some cheesy bread. Troy.
yeah. Well, you go first, and while you're shoving that in your face, and
You will
chewing,
continue talking?
I'll just continue talking, and then we'll take turns shoving in our mouths and chewing and swallowing. So Police Academy 2, that was another one. Also, I'm looking at my list here, so that's what I'm doing. Ladyhawk. Oh my God, Rutger Hauer, Ladyhawk, 1985. This movie, it's a romance date movie with swords and mysticism.
Well,
I mean,
my experience with Ladyhawk, I went and this was like a couple of years later maybe. I rode my GT Pro Performer. It was a nice bike for 1986 or 7 or something like that. In National City. First of all, never ride a nice bike in National City. Supergirl will not save you. She does not live there. I don't know why I ever thought she did, but she does not live in National City, California. Anyway, I rode my bike down to the off-brand video store and rented on Betamax Ladyhawk. And for my uncle, who I lived with at that time, this was the front half of 9th grade when I lived with my uncle, and my bike got, just long story short, my bike got stolen while I was renting Ladyhawk. And it was really fast. I just ran in, grabbed a couple of videos because he said, "Hey, go rent a couple of videos. My account is open there." And I go back outside to get on my bike, and my bike is gone. And I never saw it again. And it was the most beautiful, customized GT Pro Performer that ever was. In fact, I recently looked to see if I could find one. Like I was in Facebook Marketplace, and I saw a BMX bike, and I was like, I wonder if it's possible to reclaim my youth by buying a BMX bike, because of course BMX bikes are what middle-aged guys totally want to ride. But I would do it for that bike. I would do it. Nope, nobody had. It was the chrome one. And I had I had the black mag wheels with the white tires that said, oh yeah, I had pegs.
Yeah.
I had frame stands on the back. I had that frame stand that had the two extra tubes that made you be able to stand next to the seat tube. And I had the thing where you could spin the handlebars around, and it wouldn't wrap your things because it had a weird system where that wasn't a problem. I don't know. I don't know things, but anyway, whoever you are, you're a terrible human being, and I hope you've had an awful life until now. Turn yourself in.
now, while Kevin's about
Not
to,
too late.
Kevin's about to put another piece of cheesy bread in his mouth, and while he is, I'm going to do that contrasting again. On the one hand, 1985 gave us a Western. It was called Rustlers Rhapsody, starred Tom Berenger. He was a singing cowboy. It was a send-up and a parody of the Western as a film genre. Took advantage of a lot of the tropes of classic, the golden age of Hollywood, 1950s Westerns. Rustlers Rhapsody is funny, but not overwhelmingly, not uproariously so. Not a complete and total turkey, but not a real winner. On the other hand, what do you get if you make a Western and you put in Brian Dennehy and Linda Hunt and Jeff Goldblum and Danny Glover and Scott Glenn and Kevin Kline and Kevin Costner. You get, let me not forget Rosanna Arquette. There are even more stars.
What movie was this?
Silverado, 1985 Silverado.
Oh, yeah.
It's an excellent Western. And it also hits a bunch of the Western tropes, but it does so rather effectively. Gives us an interesting batch of characters, gives us a fairly interesting, even complex story dynamic. A little bit of riding and revenging going on. Silverado is an excellent Western if you like the Western genre. So I would put that on your list of things to do. Cop movies.
Cop movies.
So Chuck Norris is in this film called Code of Silence. Code of Silence is mostly an excellent film. It has some weak parts to it. The ending is a little, I don't know. I think you tried to go too much for the sci-fi on this one. But it's not a bad film. And again, it has high points. It has moments of excellence. I'm going to put that one with one of my favorite Chuck Norris films, actually. And while I'm at it, I'm going to... Are you done chewing? I'm not even looking at you.
Yes.
Okay. We talked about Back to the Future. We talked about Red Sonja. We did not talk about St. Elmo's Fire.
Are we going into St. Look, okay. When it comes to the films of the great what's his name?
John Hughes.
John Hughes. St. Elmo's Fire. Not as accessible. Not as fun.
It's definitely not as fun
as The Breakfast Club or Pretty in Pink or 16 Candles or name 5 more. It's
St. Elmo's Fire does have
serious.
A good soundtrack, and
it does. Yeah.
What it felt like to me when I did actually sit down and finally watch this film, it was a calendar year before I could watch this film, but it felt like The Breakfast Club graduated high school and went to college, and this is what happened to them.
Wow, that's depressing. Yeah, it seemed like a depressing movie. I didn't love it. Wasn't my thing. But there are plenty of great other movies in 1985 to fill our cups and our hour here.
You mean like the incredibly excellent Steven Spielberg film E.T., the Extraterrestrial?
Did I miss E.T.? I thought that was in 84.
Oh, I'm sorry. It was a re-release. E.T. had a re-release, and Return to the Jedi had a re-release.
Not at all surprising about either one of those things.
So in that case,
let's
talk about Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome.
Beyond Thunderdome.
2 men come in, 1 leaves.
Listen, Troy, we don't need another hero. And if we're gonna find our way home, we're gonna need to get some gas, and that's that's the premise of all the Mad Max films, the Road Warrior inclusive. They're just a bunch of people pissed off about not being able to find enough gas.
So I was a fan of. I'd seen Mad Max, and time had passed, and then I saw the Road Warrior. I was like, wow, that was an amazing sequel. And I'd read, I think you remember that magazine, Media Scene Preview, used to have all the articles about movies and stuff.
Okay.
There was an article somewhere in a particular issue that said Mel Gibson had decided not to do a 3rd installment in the Mad Max series. So it was surprising when later he actually does. He does come and do Beyond Thunderdome. I was told, I don't know how to verify this, I was told that the screenplay for the original version of Mad Max 3 was reworked. They cast Patrick Swayze, and they called the movie Steel Dawn.
What?
Yeah. So apparently, and again, I don't know if this is true. I tried to fact check, but they're
It's hard to say.
so it is entirely possible that Steel Dawn is what Mad Max 3 originally was going to be. So just replace the martial arts fights with gunfights, replace the water with gasoline, replace Patrick Swayze with Mel Gibson, and there you have it. But it is otherwise a desert wasteland. It's desolate. There's a bad guy trying to snatch up all the good stuff. And then there's a hero, a taciturn hero fighting his way through hordes of bad guys.
Troy, I thought I told you we don't need another hero.
As it turns out, we need a bunch of them.
10 years later, they recast Kevin Costner in the role, add a lot of water.
And you've got Waterworld.
And that movie...
You know, the hero we deserve, though, is Paul Rubens. And so I really want to talk about 1985's Pee-wee's Big Adventure. The story of a rebel and his bike and a protracted scene of Pee-wee dancing along to Tequila. Come on.
You can't shake it out of your mind. Once you've seen it, you cannot unsee it.
It's the best worst movie of the year, maybe. It could be the best worst movie of 1985. A lot of people.
Francis was the best villain ever.
Yeah. A lot of people put more weight into it. I see this as something that is clever and cute and totally worth seeing, sitting down and watching, but also worth, I'm not drawn to it enough to where I'm not going to get back up and go about what I was doing in a short amount of time. But
I had the feeling when I saw this movie, it felt like some film producer was trying to monetize Pee-wee's Playhouse. It's like, how can I take this and make real money off of it?
Right.
I'll put it on the silver screen. I'll make it an hour and 40 minutes, and I'll put it on the silver screen, and I'll charge people $8 a ticket for it.
Yeah.
Which I think was about going movie prices at the time.
There you go. So when it comes to... So not only did we have Police Academy 2, their first assignment, but and I don't have any image for this, but the first police story starring Jackie Chan...
Yeah.
was in 1985 as well. And Police Story, as you may know, had a bunch of sequels, and Jackie Chan really beat the crap out of that franchise.
I'll tell you what, any Jackie Chan film, especially the police stories, razor sharp fight choreography. Jackie Chan and the Jackie Chan production crew. Remember, Jackie Chan learned his craft at the Peking Opera School, or the Beijing Opera School, if I'm being politically correct. I don't even know anymore.
I don't know which is which.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know which is actually properly correct. But in any event, very precise, demanding, exacting attention to detail, emphasis on the physicality. And what you get out of this is... Jackie Chan might not actually be able to win a mixed martial art competition. He may not be stepping into the octagon, but his ability to do kicks while doing handstands, back wheels, and cart flips, and landing, on broken wooden crates and cardboard boxes, he's absolutely fantastic.
You've got a lot on yours. You've got...
So...
Where are you at?
Well, I'm about to hit Fright Night.
Yeah, the first Fright Night. Not the new David Tennant one, which was weirdly almost the same movie. Like, this is barely different, and both are quality.
So I loved Fright Night, the first one. Like, that was exactly what I wanted a horror movie to be at that point in time. I was a little jaded. Even in 1985, I was becoming jaded with the teen slasher movies, and it just got worse. Every so often, something would be good. I'm old enough to remember the first Halloween, the second Halloween, the first two Friday the 13th, but then after that, man, and it just got worse and worse. It was like the same formula with different teenagers in different scenarios, and the mad killer is a different thing each time. Remember Chopping Mall?
Oh, barely.
Where they get trapped inside the mall after hours, a bunch of rampant teenagers.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, we're going to lock ourselves in and we'll be making out with our girlfriends in the furniture store. We'll be drinking beers by the keg. And the security bot goes crazy and it goes around, killing these wayward teenagers in the places where they work. Anyway, Fright Night managed to not be any of those things. Had a vampire, had a lycanthrope, had a failed hero who redeemed himself, as played by Roddy McDowell. It was, and the Frog Brothers. I love the scenes at the comic store. Oh wait, I'm sorry. I'm thinking of Lost Boys. I accidentally got the two conflated there.
Fair enough. Anyway, now remind me, by the way, is the first Fright Night is as funny as the second, as the remake, the reboot?
I don't know. I
Have you seen the David Tennant one?
No.
Okay, I have it. You can borrow it. That one is funny. It's not like slapsticky funny, but the whole way it's meant to be a comedy.
It's Fright Night, the original, is lighthearted in places until it isn't. Mm-hmm. And then it takes a couple of more serious turns, but it all comes out great in the end. It's got a good balance. It's overall got a very good balance. Also,
and that's the one with Chris Sarandon rather than David Tennant.
Yes. Also, 1985 gave us Weird Science.
Well, weird.
Yes.
Weird how it's not coming up.
Yeah, because I know we got a picture for it.
Yeah, there we go. Listen, if you're gonna make
go.
If you're gonna make, the perfect android woman,
you're going to start with a Barbie doll, and you're going to do a lot of weird science to it, and it's going to come out, and it's going to be Kelly LeBrock, and Kelly LeBrock is going to have awesome genie powers.
Yeah.
And USA Network, I believe.
Don't hate her because she's beautiful, Troy.
Oh my God, I don't. So the USA Network actually managed to make a television series out of Weird Science. And
How was that?
I can't say that I've watched the entire series, but I watched several episodes, and they were actually kind of cool.
I feel like I did and don't remember them at all.
I can't say that any of them were especially memorable, but at the same time, they weren't so horrible that they were memorable for that either. They kind of stayed faithful to the spirit of the film while trying to continue to move along, keep the light drama, if you will. In any event, Weird Science, also 1985, going down the science theme, was Real Genius with a young Val Kilmer. Remember that one?
I do.
Oh my God. Real Genius is still to this day one of my favorite 1980s movies. We get a young high school grad moved up into the big leagues in college, put on a top secret laser program. Val Kilmer is his student mentor, and it turns out that there's some shenanigans going on here. So you think you're going to shenanigan us? We're going to out shenanigan you. It's a moral imperative.
Movies like this are what totally made me think that gave me the wrong idea about what college was supposed to be like. How could real college live up to this sort of thing?
And so Kevin entered into a science program, and very quickly,
and at no time in my experience did a laser set off a huge amount of popcorn and cause a roof to come off any building whatsoever.
Yeah. I want to say that Mythbusters tackled that.
Really? I should check that out. That makes sense. That
I think they and the determining factors, if I remember correctly, the determining factors were the sheer volume of popcorn, the mass and volume, and the amount of pressure that the expanding popcorn would have put onto the structure of the house. Whether that would have been sufficient, I don't know how they approach the science though of the 3,000 degree beam of laser heat setting off sequentially the kernels of popcorn.
Oh, yeah, didn't make a whole lot of sense that way.
It didn't need to.
Yeah.
So while we're just shooting right along,
2011 was the remake with Anton Yelchin. May he rest in peace. And also Colin Farrell was in that one.
So a couple of more re-releases in 1985, because if you didn't get enough of it the first time, Ghostbusters. And if you didn't get enough of them the first time, Gremlins. Re-released in 1985 for your benefit. Just to,
That used to happen a lot back then.
It did.
Yeah,
It did. Prior to the 1980s, it was more common for a film to circulate, to be shown almost for a whole calendar year, I feel like.
Yeah.
The closer you get to the 80s, you're starting to have more theaters with more screens, starting to get to that multiplex scenario where you can show several movies at once, but the films don't stay in the theater as long before they're replaced with some other output from the studio.
Yeah.
So, films in the theater for 6 months, 4 months, and, summer blockbusters being what they are. Now, when a movie is making all the money, well, it'll last in the theater longer, but it began to reach that point where even when a film was making a lot of money commercially, you might reduce the number of screens that it's on because you have other films that you have to put out there. You're contractually obligated, so you got to do something. However, if you've already seen those films, and we're in the letter G here with Gremlins and Ghostbusters, letter G. So over in Japan, they had already done The Return of Godzilla in 1984. But here in the United States, The Return of Godzilla was retitled Godzilla in 1985. It was edited to include scenes, once again, with veteran actor Raymond Burr, and some scenes were dubbed and sort of edited to give a different context. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. There is a scene where what happens is a Russian ship commander launches a nuclear missile. In one edit of this, it would appear that he accidentally fired the missile. In the other edit, it is clear that he intentionally fired the missile. And there were consequences to that missile's launch and detonation on the monster Godzilla and Godzilla's rampage on Tokyo. But this is what happens, so when they say, it loses something in translation, sometimes it loses a lot or it gains a lot. In any event, Raymond Burr was there for exposition, reprising the character that he had played in the original 1954 Godzilla. He was Steve Martin, reporter. Well, in the years between 1954 and 1984, comedian Steve Martin had risen to prominence. So in Godzilla 1985, Raymond Burr's character is only ever referred to as either Steven or Mr. Martin. They don't call him Steve Martin to avoid the association to the comedic actor. That kicked off...
Because if they were together, they might be two wild and crazy guys.
Two wild and crazy guys. That kicked off, incidentally, the Heisei series of the Godzilla films. Most of the rest of those would not have general theatrical releases in the United States. They'd go straight to video.
And in years... was that 1985? I was going to make a Michael Jackson joke. Never mind. The Hey Say Say series when they teamed up with Michael Jackson. Never mind. All right. I
derailed myself. Remember I brought up Code of Silence, Chuck Norris? Okay, let me contrast that with a less than stellar Chuck Norris entry, and that would be Invasion USA. there was a thing going on culturally, pop culturally, about these terrorists. You know, they might be from South America, they might be from Far East Europe, they might be Russian. Lord only knows. But there would be a lone gun-toting, fist-wielding American hero to turn these jackanapes back on their heels. And Chuck Norris is exactly that guy. You know, it's like this wicked drug gang is invading the United States, and there he is, you know, doing his thing. It's not a great film. Even by Chuck Norris standards, it's not a great film. There are films like Good Guys Wear Black, The Octagon, Code of Silence, and then there are others like Missing in Action 3, Braddock, not that good. Invasion USA, also not that good. I'm split on Forced Vengeance. Forced Vengeance is 50% decent, 50% not. Oh my God, The Hitman. That is not a good Chuck Norris movie. The Hero and the Terror. That is not a good Chuck Norris movie. But then Chuck Norris was in significantly better films. And he gave us Walker, Texas Ranger. And you know what? I'm very forgiving of that. Oh, Lone Wolf McQuade. That is an excellent film. Lone Wolf McQuade.
All right, where are you at on your list, Troy? And then I'll just fill in the ones.
Well, while we're talking about beating up the bad guys with that kind of military theme, what about Commando?
Hey, I'm wearing underwear, Troy. I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, if you're on the Flashback page, I'm sorry. So Arnold Schwarzenegger playing Major Matrix.
So he said Arnold Schwarzenegger.
So his daughter has been taken, and he is being blackmailed. If he wants to see his daughter alive again, he'll perform this task for the bad guys. And Schwarzenegger is in great shape. Most of the bad guys in this are not.
He still is at 80. Let's be fair.
You know, lots of guns, lots of explosions, lots of hair-raising stunts, and the typical Arnold Schwarzenegger quips. Commando is not necessarily cinematic genius, but it's a lot of fun and a lot of stuff explodes. Remo Williams, The Adventure Begins. Based on the series of novels, The Destroyer, starred Fred Ward.
Okay.
Remember him from Tremors?
Oh, yeah.
Tremors
Yeah.
with Kevin Bacon.
Yeah.
And so anyway, he plays the main character.
Kate Mulgrew was in this.
Yes.
I didn't remember that. I want to see young Kate Mulgrew.
Also, Joel Grey plays Chun, the Asian mentor to Remo himself. It's a half-decent film. If you know anything about the Destroyer novels, then the film is a little bit of a disappointment. If you've never read the novels, the film's actually enjoyable. It's got some hair-raising stunts, but it's got a plot that can be followed. It's not, it's not realistic, but...
If you're into whitewashing, apparently Joel Grey as an Asian dude, that's up your alley then.
I'm not as a phenomena, but I do have to say, Joel Grey played the part very, very well, and he managed to do it in such a way as to not be offensive as a stereotype to Asians.
He wasn't pulling a Dorf on Golf then.
No. So, Kevin, tell me about this one. Can you believe?
I didn't realize that he's the father-in-law of Agent Coulson.
Oh,
in real life.
Yeah, I did not know that. So, Kevin, this will be. I'm going to put some bread in my mouth here. This is your turn. Tell our fans about To Live and Die in L.A.
To Live and Die in L.A., Troy? Well, you see...
You're a Californian, so as I understand it, that movie was required watching for every citizen of the state of California.
I think you're thinking of L.A. Story, starring the better Steve Martin. To live and die in L.A. As our source says, it's an American neo-noir action thriller that Kevin doesn't remember, directed by William Friedkin and based on the novel by his former U.S. Secret Service agent Gerald Pettivich, who co-wrote the screenplay. It's got Willem Dafoe in it, and Wang Chung composed and performed the original soundtrack. Who knew? Troy did, not Kevin. I don't remember it. Oh yeah, and I actually do remember a bit of the soundtrack now that it's Wang Chung. All right, I get it. If I saw it, I would be like, oh yeah, I've seen this, but it does not occur to me. Honestly, it wasn't a big deal. I bet you it's something that I saw either on. Somebody else rented it, or it was on like HBO or something back in the day.
Home box office.
Right, home box office at the time. Or as my dad unceasingly called it, Channel 100, when we didn't have 100 channels, and nobody ever called it that but him. I don't know why he called it that.
Don't question your father.
That's all I have left, Troy, is questions. Been dead for a while.
Oh, Kevin. We'll help Kevin get through his father issues later. But I'm going to lighten the mood here.
With Transylvania 65000?
Well, also that. And one of comedy, not necessarily was it fantastic, but it did star Dan Aykroyd and Chevy Chase.
Spies Like Us?
Spies Like Us. Yeah.
All right.
Paul McCartney did the theme song for that. I went right out and bought the 45 and played the heck out of that song.
Oh, Troy was the last guy to buy a 45. That wasn't a handgun.
Remember Michael Douglas and I want to say Kathleen Turner. I don't honestly remember.
In Spies Like Us?
No, Jewel of the Nile.
Jewel of the Nile. Didn't I already mention Jewel of the Nile? Well, let me tell you, Jewel of the Nile, fantastic. Also, the follow-up. Excuse me. I might have had a beer and it's giving me the hiccups. Sorry about that.
Yes, Kathleen Turner. Kathleen Turner.
Yeah, and then they had Jewel of the Nile, followed by...
Romancing the Stone.
Oh, this is the follow-up. Hello, this is the sequel. Romancing the Stone is the first one. Anyway.
Got them backwards.
Yeah. This was before her appearance with David Duchovny in Californication, where she had really, because back in the day, Kathleen Turner had a real breathy voice and all that, and it was sexy. And then she gets up into Californication, you're just like, oh, she just sounds like a terrible smoker. But back in 1985, and whenever the first one came out, assumingly 84, maybe 83, she was fantastic. And Michael Douglas, although I bet you if we will go back and look at this, we're gonna have some of that what was supposedly sexy at the time, like grabbing women and making them kiss you and stuff like that, and you're just like, that kind of doesn't fly so much today.
I believe the term is cringeworthy.
Cringeworthy. It's probably a little bit cringeworthy. However, it had Danny DeVito as the comic relief. Solid couple of movies. I'm just sad they didn't come along with the third one, frankly.
Well, also 1985. In terms of better cinema, science fiction cinema, we got Enemy Mine.
Troy, I was going to say that to the very end.
Oh, sorry.
Because, all right, look, this is season 20, episode 5. We started 1985, 2 episodes ago, and we are going to have to end this before getting to TV and other stuff. And so let me tell you, Troy, and let me ask you the Enemy Mine question. Zombies get 4-5? You don't remember this? I always say that's something that stuck with me from that. So the child of Louis Gossett Jr.'s character, and they're like they're reptilian race. They I think they only have one sex. The child that he bears on this barren planet that he's stuck on, is called Zombies, and so he's raised by what's the guy's name? Troy.
It's one of the Quaid brothers.
Yeah, Dennis Quaid.
Dennis, thank you.
Yeah. He's raised by Dennis Quaid, who I don't remember his character name. Anyway, so he's a Drac. There we go. Willis Davidge, and he hates Drax and Gurr. You know, they're the worst, and they have some space battle, and they crash on the same planet, and they're forced to get along together if they are to survive, and survive they do. And Davidge raises zombies, and that's one of the things. They only have 3 fingers, and he sees that his father, Davidge, has 5 fingers, and he asks, you know, as kids tend to do, you know, who are different from their parents, you know, zombies get 4 or 5. Like, is he gonna get 5 fingers eventually? And that's one of those things where I'm just like, oh, it's the cutest thing. I mean, it hits me even worse today for reasons that will be obvious to my friends.
Hey.
What?
She's grown all of her fingers now. It's okay,
God
Kevin.
damn it,
Her
Troy.
fingers came in.
Anyway, it's a fantastic movie that I want to see again. Oh, and by the way, you can see Louis Gossett Jr. now on HBO in Watchmen. Which, by the way, Troy, I told you last time we spoke about it on the Flashback show. I said, "Oh, this is very much, you know, it has very little to do with Watchmen." The following episode just hit me in the face. Oh, yes, it does. Oh, yes, it does. And by the way, it always did. And those people who you thought weren't who you thought they were them. This is how I talk when I'm not trying to be spoilery. But people like Mike, who's watching us right now. Hi, Mike, and Blake. And so in the other room, they will all say, "Yep, you're right." The original Watchmen characters are there. As to who Louis Gossett Jr. plays in Watchmen and how it affects everything, well, you should watch it. Eventually, Comics Online will spoil it, but that day is not today.
That day is not today. So, Kevin, I know we're running short on time here. What do we got for television? Can we hit some beats here for TV before we're out?
We're over time at this point.
Are we?
Yeah.
In fact?
We're over an hour now.
All right. Well, I just heard I just heard our studio producer cocking the shotgun. So I assume we are in fact out of time.
Yeah. So we'll go and hit the last couple of things when it comes to this is television. I don't want television today. But what I do want is the rest of the stuff from movies. And what didn't we hit? Ewoks 2. Come on, Ewoks. Ewoks: The Battle for Endor. Now this is a straight to TV movie, obviously, so it's a little bit on both sides. Let's see. We hit Ladyhawk. The Journey of Natty Gann. The only person who is more into Natty Gann than me is, Patton Oswalt. And that's because he just married her a couple of years ago. And let me tell you, I was, jealous of that guy before. But now that he's married to Natty Gann, come on. She is amazing. What?
He remarried?
Oh, yeah, his wife died.
Does that mean that Danny died?
No. This is the one that he married just a couple of years ago.
Oh, so he remarried?
Yeah, he did. Yeah. He was widowed, and then that's that. Okay. What else do we have? Black Cauldron. And I'm just going through what do you call genre items. We hit all of those. You know what we didn't hit? Teen Wolf.
Oh my God, Michael J. Fox, Teen Wolf.
Oh God, hold on. Hold on. Before we get there, Legend. Now, all right,
How did you not?
Eric, I remember Tim Curry as this devil character. That's about all I remember from it. Where did you? Yeah,
Watch it again.
is it good? Is it worth it? Come on, talk on Mike. Come on.
I don't like. Okay, so it was it was a fantasy story, man. It's a great fantasy story. It's got obviously
It
Tim
never
Curry is the devil, and then Tom Cruise is in it, and there's
it never stuck with me. I mean, besides that awesome character design for the devil,
and the scenes are so powerful too.
are they?
Yeah.
I do remember. I think the parts of Labyrinth that are frightening, they're frightening for different reasons. Legend definitely wants to frighten you a little bit more with their visuals.
Yeah, I definitely got a much more terrifying vibe from Legend.
There we go. Now we're back.
But, I mean, again, too, Legend was not the story of babysitting your brother and having your brother taken by the Goblin King because you made a horrible wish.
True, but what I'm saying is I could watch Labyrinth tonight and not feel like, oh, this is a dated movie. Like, it's just a fun fantasy story that just tests. And I think Legend has the same kind of holding power. It's a fun fantasy story that, well, not so fun, but it's a dark fantasy story.
Yeah.
But I could go and watch Legend tonight and not feel like, oh, this is dated, this is old.
Yeah, it's like there are movies that are in this decade. Legend, I could rewatch. Labyrinth, I could rewatch. I have very little interest in The Last Unicorn. I could rewatch Willow. I could rewatch The Dark Crystal.
Man, I could watch Willow 100 times too. That movie is
Oh
great.
yeah, that one didn't stick with me,
Really?
but the Dark Crystal and Last Unicorn stuck with me.
Yeah, and Last Unicorn and Never-Ending Story, like
Definitely
those.
that, yeah.
I love Neverending
Yeah,
Story.
it's like I could let them go, but and again, to each their own. Obviously, the three of us don't agree completely on any of these things. So we'll be in the backyard with chainsaws fighting it out, winner take all.
The Honey I Shrunk the series. That's late.
I shrunk the kid. I blew up the kid. Yeah.
Shrunk the Parents. So 1985 also featured top seller Michael J. Fox in Teen Wolf. Hey Troy, if you become a lycanthrope and you're a teenager, what's the first thing you're gonna do? Try out for basketball. Well, Michael J. Fox shows you that is the case.
Well, see, I kind of feel like that's what Michael J. Fox would do. I have been trying to become a lycanthrope for quite some time now.
You drinking from paw prints?
And, exploring other alternative sources. But that's a big one.
Having hairy women bite you?
I try not to do that anymore.
As weird as this is, I think that if Teen Wolf were to happen today, we are living in a society that all right, well, he's just got hair in his face. Don't give the guy crap. He's trying out for basketball. Come on, let him give him a fair shot. I feel like this is the era for where now's the time. Lycanthropy now. This is it.
Lycanthropy now.
You know what?
I'm gonna go and march on the Capitol with a big sign. Lycanthropy now.
This is the
we
time.
We should do
to
that
be
on the
mutant.
weekend. I think that's my new hobby.
This is the time to be a freaky mutant.
Because you might as well. There's enough insanity going on down in D.C. We're so close to D.C. For those of you who don't realize, we're really close to D.C. and we can just take a little trip over there and walk around with lycanthropy. Hashtag lycanthropy now.
So in the South, we say things like a stone's throw. We're a stone's throw from D.C., but I wouldn't recommend throwing stones. You get written up.
It would be problematic. So apparently, much like Rambo, 1985, we'll see a part 4. And we'll talk some television, we'll talk some other stuff, we'll talk some video games, we'll talk some events. I have yet to tell you my fantastic story about my first trip to Comic-Con, which happened in the first few days of August of 1985, and I will tell you that story. And you know, because we've got Comic-Con behind us, or at least downtown where Comic-Con is now. Anyway, so that's our show for this week.
For this week,
we will be back next week and we're going to talk with, what's her name, Troy?
With Casey Pierce of Source Point Comics. Kevin's going to have a chance to read her graphic novel. I'm also going to do the same. And she's a wonderful young woman, talented young woman that I met at Baltimore Comic-Con earlier this year. And she's going to tell us all the reasons why we should all be buying her comics.
Sounds good. So we've got that new interview one, and then after that, we will come back and eventually we will complete 1985. Zombies will get 4, if not 5. So for Troy and everybody at Flashback, because why the heck not? And for EK the DJ and everybody here at FXBG Public Radio in Fredericksburg, Virginia, and for everything Geek Pop Culture, I'm Kevin Goswan, and this is Comics Online. Bitches!
Swag.
Disclaimer: the opinions expressed in this podcast may not represent those of Comics Online, any participants, or any employers past, present, or future. If you would have thought otherwise without hearing this disclaimer, maybe you're not ready for this whole internet thing, much less Comic-Con in the 80s. Or maybe you're instead one of our smart and sexy fans who appreciate foul language, going back to the future, biting sarcasm, and everything geek pop culture. If you have comments or questions for the Comics Online podcasters, post on our Facebook page, tweet us on Twitter, or email us at podcast@comicsonline.com. All original material in this podcast copyright Comics Online.